Does your website have ADA compliance? Do you even know what that means, and what does it take in order to comply with the ADA? Is it applicable to your small practice website? The answers to all of that and more coming right up in this video, which continues right now. So yes, your website for your practice does need to be ADA compliant. In fact, the ADA was first signed into law in 1990, which was well before the advent of the internet. But over the years, it's been updated and improved for the emerging world that we have now, including websites. So recently, the Supreme Court interpreted websites that are places of public accommodation under the ADA, which means you need to have it available for people who are visually impaired, sometimes physically impaired, but allow people who have other needs to be able to navigate your website. So how does that work? How can you do something about your website? And why does it even matter beyond being a good person? One of the reasons it matters is that a fine could be levied upon you, and it's $75,000 per incident. So that's a good reason to kind of put some ADA compliance fire under your butt. But mainly, you want to make sure that plaintiffs' attorneys aren't coming around and suing you. So over the past 8 years, website lawsuits under this ADA rule have gone up enormously, exponentially, really. And what they do is, as a former litigator, and we usually were on the defense side, what they do is they take one complaint, which is the basis of a lawsuit, and they will write it for a particular industry, let's say dentist. And then they will just swap out the dentist name and the website URL, and they will file these lawsuits. They'll go industry by industry and do it. And so that's been happening. You may even know somebody who's had that happen to them. And so one of the best ways to discourage those attorneys from targeting your website is to make it ADA compliant. So let's talk about what that means, how you can do it, and what that means and how you can do it. Let's go. So as you probably already know, and you might associate the ADA with, is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination based on disability. And most people think of physical disability, like wheelchair ramps, right? For websites to be compliant, it must be accessible to people who browse the web with assistive devices, people who are blind that have text readers, but also people who have color or contrast issues. And if a website's not accessible to people with those kinds of special needs, it's not compliant with the law. Because of how the legislation is written, having a website that's not accessible to everybody will be interpreted as active discrimination. So if healthcare providers are actively discriminating against people with disabilities, healthcare providers with those websites are at risk of being sued. It's that simple. So again, I've said they've increased over the past few years, and they do go from industry to industry. So whether that's chiropractors or dentists or orthodontists, they kind of just are efficient in that way. They write one complaint, they get one that they like, and then they just go ahead and use that as a template to do the next one. So from industry to industry, they're rising. Depending on which article you look at, the 50% increase from each year to the next, starting around 2018. So I usually don't traffic in fear, but this is something that you can totally fix, and it's super easy, and I'll get to that in a second. So with some minor exceptions, ADA compliance for like private companies and others, ADA compliance is required for business websites and definitely government run websites. So the good news is there's lots of ways to fix it. So how can you do it? Since the ADA was adopted in 1990 and it's been updated over the years, it's not 100% the best on web accessibility because one, the law is a law and we have a Congress that needs to act in order to change it. So what they do is they defer a lot of their enforcement ability to the worldwide standards. So there's a worldwide standard called Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG or WCAG. Right now we're at WCAG 2.0. Some of those standards are mandatory under other US laws, such as the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and the Air Carrier Access Act of 1986. Under the ADA, they are a voluntary technical standard. But following the WCAG standards are the best we have, meaning in order to meet ADA standards right now, it's wisest to follow the WCAG 2.0 AA standards. So even though non-compliance with WCAG does not mean non-compliance with the ADA, that's still our best standard because that's being updated over time. As you can tell by the 2.0 numbering system, they have updated it, they've overhauled it recently. And the Department of Justice has come out and said that that following WCAG will be inherently following ADA. So that's our standard that the courts are going to use. And let's figure out how we can make your website compliant pretty easily. And one of the solutions we have that I use personally, you'll see a little picture of a little Vitruvian man on the side of my website. And that is through the use of a website widget from accessiBe. accessiBe is a website, an ADA website kind of crawler, and it'll go in and fix website errors on your website. All you do is you drop in a line of code on your website header or footer on the back end, and then it will crawl through and it will allow you to use this incredible screen assistant device on your website specifically, especially if that person who's needing the assistance isn't at home or doesn't have screen reading assistant technology built into their own device. So what does it even do? It goes through and it looks at images on your website, and if there's no alt tag, meaning when you hover over a picture, there's a little description, that is for people with screen readers primarily, so that they can read what the image is about if they can't actually see it. It also allows people to navigate through the website using a keyboard or using a screen reader based on the headings that you use. So believe it or not, when you're writing something on your website, instead of just using like the header 1 function to make your text look bigger, you should probably use like making the font bigger somehow otherwise than using header settings, because people navigate by those header 1, header 2, header 3 settings using screen readers. So another place of concern is links that don't have proper descriptions of where they go. So someone could be clicking on a link and it's not clear where it's going. So these accessibility tools through accessiBe that I use are pretty cost effective. It's only $49 a month at this point, and it'll help you prevent $75,000 fines or worse through website settlements. So I highly recommend accessiBe. I use it on my website. You can get a look at it at functionallawyer.com. And it'll at least deter plaintiff's attorney lawsuits from coming at you. And it will largely help you comply with WCAG. Although there are some things you may have to do manually to be 100% compliant, it will effectively let people access your website in a more efficient way. And that's really the whole point behind these non-discrimination suits in the first place, or laws in the first place. Giving people the same level of access as everybody else, even if they have special needs. So if you have any questions about this or anything else related to your website, if you don't have terms and conditions or privacy policy or disclaimers on your website, you can always go to functionallawyer.com. But for this one, I'll put a link down in the description to get you over to accessiBe to get a deal over there with them. So they're who I use. Subscribe if this is helpful. Check out some of the other videos that are appearing on your screen now. And we'll see you guys in the next video.